An 8-year-old girl witnessed the horrifying murder of her entire family, and shockingly became the captive of the assailant. Despite the harrowing captivity, this brave young girl exhibited an extraordinary level of composure and intelligence. In an astonishing turn of events, she managed to outsmart the murderer and, remarkably, took matters into her own hands to ensure he faced justice behind bars. As the investigation progressed, law enforcement found a significant piece of evidence in the murderer's vehicle, a disturbing video camera. The recorded footage was nothing short of gruesome and brutal, leaving a lasting impact, especially on officers who were parents themselves. The footage documented not only the torment inflicted on the young girl's family but also revealed a series of other heinous murders committed by the assailant. Shockingly, this man turned out to be a cold-blooded serial killer. The revelation of the case incited widespread public outrage, prompting the federal court to revise the killer's sentence from life imprisonment to the death penalty. What did this individual do to evoke such collective fury? How did the young girl manage to navigate her way to self-rescue and ensure that this malevolent criminal faced justice? Hello everyone, welcome back to BC Storytime. I'm Ben. In today's episode, we're delving into the chilling tale of the Coeur Devil, a chilling series of murders that sent shockwaves across the United States. Our protagonist in this story is a remarkable girl named Shasta Gruen. Born into an ordinary family in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, USA, Shasta was just 8 years old when tragedy struck. In addition to her parents, she had 2 brothers, Dylan, aged 9, and Slade, aged 13, with whom she shared a close bond. Despite being the youngest, Shasta displayed a maturity beyond her years. To her brothers, she seemed more like a big sister, always the first person they turned to for help. Even her parents valued her opinions on family matters. Shasta possessed an uncanny ability to read people's emotions swiftly, allowing her to offer timely comfort and guidance, creating a harmonious and happy family life with minimal conflicts. However, fate took a dark turn, shattering their peaceful family existence. On the early morning of May 16, 2005, as Shasta slept in her room, her mother urgently woke her with alarming news. A gunman had invaded their home. With no windows for a direct escape from her room, Shasta and her mother ventured out to confront the unfolding nightmare. What awaited them was a scene of horror: her father and 2 brothers bound and subdued on the living room floor, a menacing figure in his 40s brandishing a hunting rifle. The man noticed Shasta and her mother and swiftly aimed the gun at them, forcing them into restraints. His chilling warning echoed through the room: anyone daring to raise their voice would meet a fatal end. Thus, the Gruen family of 5 fell under the complete control of the man in black. Unbeknownst to Shasta's family, the intruder breaking into their home seemed motivated solely by money, and they believed once he got what he wanted, he would depart, with their lives unlikely to be at risk. However, they overlooked a crucial detail. Why did the man in black, if his intention was merely robbery, expose his face instead of concealing it? Wasn't he afraid of being identified by the police later? Clearly, the man in black had one sinister motive from the beginning. He had no intention of leaving any witnesses alive. The man in black surveyed the surroundings, eventually fixing his gaze on Shasta, Dylan, and Slade, the 3 siblings. He scrutinized them as if appreciating a fine piece of art. While the 3 siblings felt a sense of panic under his gaze, Shasta and Dylan remained surprisingly calm throughout, never uttering a word. It was Slade, the eldest, who couldn't bear the tension and suddenly shouted, "Why? Why are you doing this?" His cries grew louder. Seeing Slade's distress, the man in black, revealing his true malevolent nature, retrieved a hammer from his backpack and forcibly dragged Slade to the backyard. In less than a minute, the man returned to the living room, the hammer now stained with blood. Slade, who had been shouting moments ago, had fallen silent. Witnessing this, Shasta's mother, tears streaming down her face, questioned the man. "What have you done to my son?" The man in black, with an evil smile, offered no answer to the distressed mother. Instead, he took Shasta and Dylan outside again. This time, he didn't harm the siblings but bound them in the front yard, cautioning them to stay quiet or face death. With that, he returned to the living room. Shortly afterward, Shasta and Dylan, bound in the front yard, heard the anguished cries of their parents. About a minute later, the man in black emerged from the house carrying the blood-stained hammer. Clearly, Shasta's parents had likely met a tragic fate. But just as the man in black stepped out, he saw 13-year-old Slade stumbling from the backyard. Slade, disoriented and drenched in blood, displayed a nasty head wound, clearly taking a serious hit. Turns out, the man had dragged Slade to the backyard and hammered his head. Thinking Slade was done for, he returned to the living room. Shockingly, Slade, still kicking, made it to the front yard. Seeing this, the man in black, in front of Shasta and Dylan, lifted the hammer again and struck Slade twice more. This time, Slade crumpled to the ground, motionless. Witnessing their brother's death, 9-year-old Dylan couldn't contain himself and burst into tears. Concerned that Dylan's cries might alert the neighbors, the man in black approached Dylan, seemingly prepared to end his life as well. Shasta, quick to intervene, urged Dylan to remain silent. Upon seeing Dylan cease his wails, the man in black refrained from further violence. His primary objective was to take Shasta and Dylan as captives. Relieved that he spared them, he swiftly carried the two siblings into a jeep and sped away from the scene. The next morning, when Shasta's neighbor went out for a jog, he detected a strong smell of blood. At a glance, he saw a large pool of blood in front of Shasta's house. Upon entering, he discovered 3 lifeless bodies lying in a pool of blood. Terrified, the neighbor quickly dialed the emergency number. Upon receiving the report, the police promptly arrived at the scene. Shasta's parents and brother Slade lay motionless in the living room, lifeless and already showing signs of lividity. At this point, attentive viewers may have noticed an anomaly. Earlier, we mentioned that Slade was attacked in the front yard, yet his body was found in the living room. Why did this happen? After a thorough investigation, the police discovered a long blood trail from the front yard to the living room. After analysis, they concluded that the trail was left by Slade. Despite enduring 3 severe blows from the hammer, Slade hadn't died. After the man in black left, he regained consciousness, though critically wounded. Unable to stand, he crawled to his parents. Perhaps his only thought was to die beside them. When he reached his parents' bodies, he finally succumbed. The police also noticed that the bedding in Shasta and Dylan's room was unfolded, indicating someone had slept there last night. This suggested that Shasta and Dylan were likely in the house at the time of the incident. However, despite searching all the rooms, the police found no trace of the siblings. They deduced that the children had been abducted by the assailant. This discovery heightened the tension for the Coeur d'Alene Police Department. While a delayed resolution to a murder case might not have a significant impact, the safety of 2 abducted children was a critical concern. Given the brutality of the assailant, who had killed 3 people, the danger to the siblings was evident. The situation was urgent, and rescuing Shasta and Dylan became the top priority for the police. Unfortunately, no useful leads were found at the crime scene. Not even a fingerprint of the assailant was discovered, indicating a high level of anti-forensic awareness. The only valuable piece of information was that, through on-site investigation, the police determined that no valuable items were missing from Shasta's home. Consequently, they ruled out robbery and categorized the case as a revenge-driven mass murder, a targeted attack by someone acquainted with the family. The police immediately initiated an investigation into Shasta's family's social connections. While the police's reasoning wasn't entirely illogical, from our God's-eye view, we know their investigative approach was fundamentally flawed. However, this was not their fault. No one could have anticipated such a heinous act, a complete massacre of an unfamiliar family. Over the next few days, the police failed to find any useful clues. Their search teams made no progress. Faced with no other choice, the police had to post Shasta and Dylan's photos on various social media platforms, hoping that someone with information could provide assistance. Unfortunately, the police still received no fruitful information. Meanwhile, on the perpetrator's side, immediately after the incident, he left Idaho and drove to a camping area in Montana. This location lacked surveillance and was surrounded by dense forests. Being in a different state, the chances of the police catching him were minimal. This meant that Shasta and Dylan had only themselves to rely on for rescue. Now, let's explore how Shasta, this miraculous 8-year-old girl, managed to save herself step by step and eventually played a crucial role in putting a serial killer behind bars. After abducting Shasta and Dylan, the man in black, Joseph Edward Duncan, drove to a remote camping area in Montana. Initially, Joseph appeared somewhat friendly, but over time, his sinister nature emerged. He began tormenting Shasta and Dylan, recording the entire process with a video camera. However, afterward, he would apologize to the siblings, promising to let them go in the future. He even allowed them to write letters to their living relatives. Later, Shasta discovered that all of Joseph's promises were lies. Not a single letter had been sent. 2 weeks passed, and Dylan, unable to bear the torture, contemplated suicide at the young age of 9. The trauma during this period had taken a severe toll on him. Fortunately, Shasta hadn't given up hope of surviving. She continually comforted Dylan, saying, "As long as we don't give up, we will definitely leave here alive." With Shasta's reassurance, Dylan found the courage to persevere once again. After 3 weeks, Shasta and Dylan finally had a chance for freedom. One day, Joseph told them that if they could catch a squirrel, he would set them free. Hearing this, the siblings finally showed genuine smiles. They exerted all their efforts to catch a squirrel. After a chase, Dylan successfully caught one. Excitedly, he ran to Shasta, held her hand, and shouted, "Sis, I caught a squirrel! We can finally leave!" However, before Dylan's words could fully register, Shasta heard a loud bang. Turning around, she saw Dylan collapse with a massive gunshot wound to his chest. It was Joseph, worried that Dylan might not die thoroughly, firing another shot at him while he was already on the ground. Witnessing her brother's death once again, Shasta could no longer maintain her composure. She cried bitterly, devastated that Dylan was her last close relative. While Dylan might not have been able to help Shasta escape and sometimes needed her comfort, having a trusted family member around provided a sense of security. Now that Dylan was gone, in the days ahead, Shasta would have to face Joseph, who seemed like a demon, all alone. Thinking about this filled her with immense fear, confusion, and even suicidal thoughts. However, Shasta quickly regained her former calmness, telling herself she couldn't give up. Based on Joseph's current actions, Shasta finally realized that he had no intention of leaving anyone alive, and she, too, would eventually fall victim to him. Fueled by an innate survival instinct, Shasta started contemplating strategies to stay alive and break free. Another week rolled by, and Joseph eventually geared up to make a move against Shasta. He put on a facade of being easygoing, casually presenting Shasta with 2 choices for her demise, either death by strangulation or death by gunshot. In that critical moment, Shasta opted for strangulation. Reacting to this, Joseph looped a rope around her neck, gearing up to tighten it. However, in a sudden twist, Shasta called out to Joseph, addressing him as "Dad." The reason behind this address was Shasta's keen observation during her captivity, noting Joseph's apparent desire to have a child. Shasta recognized that establishing trust, particularly through a familial bond, was her best chance to avoid harm. In reality, Joseph was genuinely taken aback by Shasta's unexpected display of affection. He instinctively released his grip on Shasta's hands, and gradually, his gaze softened. Ultimately, he abandoned the idea of ending Shasta's life. From that moment onward, Shasta not only played the role of a compliant subordinate to Joseph, but also changed her way of addressing him, directly calling him "Dad." Despite her internal reluctance, Shasta had no option but to endure humiliation for the sake of survival. As time passed, Joseph became increasingly hesitant to harm Shasta. Yet, he didn't fully trust her and decided to put Shasta's loyalty to the test. Previously, whenever Joseph ventured out for groceries or essentials, he'd lock Shasta up. However, on this specific day, as he left, he intentionally chose not to lock Shasta, giving her an excellent chance to escape. Craftily, Joseph lurked nearby, ready to strike if Shasta dared to run, leading her to an imminent demise. Once Joseph departed, Shasta scrutinized her surroundings, genuinely contemplating escape. Yet, she swiftly abandoned the notion. Remember, we previously highlighted Shasta's astute ability to read people. She could discern emotions from expressions. She vividly recalled Joseph's peculiar demeanor when he prepared to leave for shopping that day. Though the 8-year-old Shasta was oblivious to Joseph's set trap, she sensed something amiss, opting against taking needless risks. Observing Shasta refraining from escape, Joseph emerged from his covert position, content with the outcome. he told Shasta. "Henceforth, you're my daughter." Clearly, Joseph had completely let down his guard concerning Shasta. Little did he fathom that an 8-year-old girl could wield such high emotional and intellectual acumen, adeptly concealing her genuine thoughts even from a shrewd adult like him. From that day forward, Shasta's safety became relatively secure, while Joseph's destiny of being apprehended was irrevocably sealed. In an unexpected twist on July 2, 2005, approximately 2 months after Shasta's abduction, Joseph unexpectedly suggested taking Shasta out and expressed the desire to revisit the places from her past as a way of saying goodbye to the past. He mentioned that they would be heading to a different state, possibly never returning. Strangely, Shasta didn't feel disheartened by this. When she got wind of Joseph's plan to take her out, she was brimming with excitement, realizing that her golden opportunity to escape had arrived. Escaping solely with her modest strength posed a considerable challenge, and venturing into a bustling city seemed to be her best shot at finding help. Consequently, Shasta began mentally strategizing her escape, while maintaining a cool demeanor, responding to Joseph with no trace of suspicion. Soon after, Joseph chauffeured Shasta back to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, revisiting her former residence, school, and other familiar spots. Notably, Joseph prohibited Shasta from leaving the car, insisting she observe from a distance. As the trip down memory lane drew to a close, Joseph decided to stop at a remote convenience store to grab some snacks. Inviting Shasta to join him, he was unknowingly setting the stage for her escape. However, once inside the convenience store, Shasta refrained from immediately seeking help from the patrons. Aware of Joseph's erratic behavior, she hesitated to make a loud plea for assistance, fearing a potential lethal response. Shasta had developed a profound fear of Joseph, refraining from any overt actions. Consequently, she communicated her distress through subtle eye signals, hoping someone would comprehend her plight and assist in alerting the police. To the casual observer, Joseph and Shasta appeared to be a genuine father-daughter pair, and no one picked up on the 8-year-old girl's shifting expressions. Just as Joseph prepared to settle the bill and leave, the cashier recognized Shasta at a glance. She was the missing girl featured on television 2 months prior. Combined with Shasta's discreet signals, the cashier's suspicions heightened. Swiftly, the cashier concocted a story about a malfunctioning cash register and claimed she needed to consult the manager in the back office. Making a quick call to the police from the office, the cashier and convenience store manager collaborated to delay Joseph, fabricating a tale about the need for a cash register reboot and requesting him to wait momentarily. Ultimately, thanks to the cashier and store manager's stalling tactics, the police arrived in the nick of time and successfully subdued Joseph. At this point, after enduring a nightmare lasting over 2 months, Shasta was finally rescued. In this moment, she felt a tremendous sense of relief and reverted to her 8-year-old self, bursting into tears. Unrestrained, she openly conveyed her disgust and hatred towards Joseph. After returning to the police station, authorities initiated an investigation into Joseph's background. It was then revealed that this individual was practically a demon walking among us, engaging in criminal activities for most of his life. Joseph Edward Duncan, at the age of 17, committed a crime by killing a 14-year-old boy, resulting in a 20-year prison sentence. However, he served only 14 years and was paroled in 1994. In March 2003, Joseph was once again arrested by the police for committing a crime against another 14-year-old boy. Fortunately, this time, the police intervened early, preventing Joseph from causing significant harm to the boy. With the help of a doctor friend, Joseph posted bail and regained his freedom. Subsequently, in May 2005, Joseph committed the heinous crime of wiping out Shasta's family of 5. Armed with information provided by Shasta, the police located Joseph's Jeep, discovering a video camera inside. The recorded footage left law enforcement seething, particularly officers who were parents themselves. The video not only documented the abuse suffered by Shasta and her brother Dylan, it also showcased the torment of many other innocent young victims. This revelation prompted the police to connect Joseph to numerous unsolved cases, each crime more heinous than the last. Now, let's delve into the extent of Joseph's atrocities against innocent lives. On April 4, 1997, 9-year-old Anthony Martinez was abducted while playing in California. His lifeless body was discovered on April 19th in a wooded area of a park. Due to a lack of leads at the time, the perpetrator remained elusive. However, it's now confirmed that Joseph was behind this crime. In July 1996, 2 girls mysteriously vanished in the Seattle area, 9-year-old Carmen Cubayas and 11-year-old Samaha White. The police failed to locate them initially, and only after 17 months were their skeletal remains found on a hillside. Joseph was conclusively linked to these 2 murders as well. Yet, these cases represent only those that the police have currently corroborated. Authorities suspect that, considering Joseph's pattern of criminality, he likely victimized others, the absence of adequate evidence being the only factor keeping these cases in the shadows. Joseph possessed an acute counter-surveillance acumen. Ahead of each crime, he meticulously planned every detail, ensuring flawless execution and leaving behind no traces. According to Joseph's confession, before assaulting Shasta's family, he surveilled them for nearly a month, discreetly sneaking into Shasta's yard whenever it was unoccupied to feed their pet dog. Over time, the dog's animosity towards him waned, explaining its silence when Joseph intruded into Shasta's home at night. On the day of the crime, Joseph donned gloves and an additional layer of plastic protection. Even his shoes were disposable. Furthermore, all tools used in the crime were scavenged, guaranteeing the absence of any clues at the crime scene. Were it not for Shasta's quick thinking, Joseph might still be eluding justice today. On October 16, 2006, the courtroom officially held Joseph's trial. Ultimately, Joseph was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms with no chance of parole. However, the story did not end there. Due to the heinous nature of Joseph's crimes, causing widespread public outrage, many citizens suggested the court impose the death penalty. Ultimately, the federal court listened to public sentiment, and on August 27, 2008, Joseph was resentenced to death. In November of the following year, the court added 3 more life sentences as 3 additional homicides he committed came to light. It's worth noting that during Joseph's trial, he wore a bulletproof vest to guard against potential acts of vigilantism, illustrating the intense public hatred directed towards him. Subsequently, Joseph was sent to federal prison and spent over a decade confined in a death row cell. Though Joseph's execution was repeatedly delayed, on March 28, 2021, he succumbed to brain cancer while in prison. While Joseph received the punishment he deserved, the damage he inflicted upon society is irreparable. Shasta, the sole survivor who managed to escape his clutches, bears severe psychological scars from the harrowing experience. She frequently wakes up in the middle of the night from nightmares, and her life, both academically and personally, has become a chaotic mess. A once bright young girl has been utterly shattered. In her adulthood, Shasta almost strayed down a destructive path. If not for encountering her husband later on, she might never have been able to regain a semblance of normalcy in her life. Now, after extensive psychological counseling, Shasta has completely emerged from the shadows of her childhood trauma. When asked about Joseph, she responds, "I have forgiven him. If I don't forgive him, he will continue to control my life. I know life must go on, so today, he no longer has any power over me." Evidently, Shasta was not defeated by the demon. She has stepped out of the shadows. Currently working as a mental health counselor, she uses her experiences to help and inspire many children going through adversity to break free from the psychological confines. Sincere wishes go out to this resilient and compassionate young woman, hoping that she continues to prosper and remains forever happy in the days to come. That concludes our story for this installment. Now, how do you perceive this case? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. As always, take care of yourself, and until next time,